So my mother was an alcoholic from long before I was born until the day she died. And when you grow up in volatile circumstances, you learn how to watch people, what they say and what they do, where those two things align and where they diverge, because that's how you survive. Now, I avoided a lot of the most common outcomes for somebody with my background, but for a long time now, I've felt really uneasy because I still feel like I'm in the space of someone struggling with an addiction. And I've realized that it's this job, it's this industry. Forever asking for an extension on borrowed trust, talking about how good things used to be and how they will be again someday, if only, counting on a big break to save us all, and all manner of excuses and justifications when we come up short. I watched her want to save herself, and she would constantly make all of these lists of all the little things that she could do, odd jobs to make ends meet, but money wasn't the real problem. One of the most damning experiences of trying to save someone who's not yet ready or able to save themselves is when you see what they could be if they could only find their way to the changes they're forever promising. It's not the bad times that threatens hope, it's the good times. That's what makes you stay. That's what makes it hard when you can see what could be. I always knew that she could be good, and she could manage it for a while, but the inevitable always loomed. And I think a lot about who we ask to be good and who we require it from, and one need only look at a day's worth of headlines to see that play out. Our job includes showing the world who's failed to measure up, and so often that's based on standards designed by people invested in guaranteeing which groups come out on the different sides of that line. We seek to shine a light on lies, injustice, and corruption, and those good times when we see the reporting that does that, that shows that we can do that, that's what matters, and there are so many who work so hard to do that. But so often, too, the effort is distracted and scattered, not wielded equally and fairly, and sometimes it burns by carelessness or intention the very people it's supposed to serve. Now, the other challenge for someone trying to overcome is the fear of what life is like on the other side, a fear of not knowing who they'll be and what they'll have to give up. The unknown and the path to get there is more terrifying than familiar suffering. What would journalism be if we actually changed all of the things we're saying we want to change? If we stopped valuing men who abuse their power both in and outside of our organizations more than all the people they harm, if we hired fairly and paid and promoted equally, if we reported for all audiences, not just the ones that make good consumers for advertisers or paid subscribers and donors, if we stopped acting like two is the only number of sides and they're always equal, and if we considered more carefully the harm we can cause our sources and our communities. If we stopped using the language of war to report on our institutions and political process. What could journalism be on the other side of our worst tendencies? What are we afraid of giving up to get there? Who is afraid of giving up their power? The greatest demand for being good is always placed on the shoulders of the people with the least amount of power. It is our society's most reliable way of making sure that people with power can keep it and accumulate more while holding responsible those who do not have any. And journalism plays a required role in enabling or exposing these structures. It's a hard time to be in our newsrooms, but it's a hard time to be almost anywhere. And while we're attacked for many things that we have no control over and things that aren't true, we still have a lot of power. Not as much as we'd like, but a hell of a lot more than the people in our audiences, and we have to be careful with it to be worthy of it. We're willing to coordinate 400 editorials to talk about the value and importance of news media, but when have we done so to talk about something our audience needs? Now, collaboration is my day job, and I was excited to see that, but I also recognize what it looks like if journalism marshals all of its best resources for ourselves if we're not willing to do that for our audiences. We lurch from one potential savior of journalism to another, stats and data, pivot to video, social media, events, podcasts, newsletters, AI, blockchain, and aren't you tired? It's a never-ending list. None of these things are going to save us, and they can't save us if we won't change the thing that actually will help our newsrooms evolve. I remember so clearly how my mother hoped to save herself. If only this, if only that, but she had no power. But dollars are easier to focus on than fixing relationships. The future of journalism is and always will be people. The thing that will save journalism is people. In our newsrooms and outside of our newsrooms, people from all kinds of backgrounds and perspectives, and our future depends on how we treat them, how we include them or exclude them, how we represent and serve them, how we invest in them. Millions of people without power are watching us, what we say and what we do, where those two things align and where they diverge, because what we do when we do it well can help them survive, and when we fail, we make survival harder for them in our industry. So my first question for journalism isn't how we scale or innovate or come up with successful business models. It's the same question I asked my mother the last time I saw her, a question I know now she couldn't answer. I have to ask it because it's the question that requires an answer from those with power. Can you be good? Thanks.